Many trucking companies and organizations are involved in efforts to recognize and report suspected instances of human trafficking. But what happens to these victims once they escape their traffickers? How do they cope with the trauma they've lived through? Hear from a longtime member of the trucking and logistics community who's recently founded a nonprofit to address that question. This is Deborah Lockridge. I'm the chief editor for HDT Trucking, and today I'm talking to Sharon Siar. She's a longtime trucking and logistics leader who is the co-founder of a relatively new nonprofit organization to help survivors of human trafficking called Gift of Freedom. Sharon, welcome to HDT Talks Trucking.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You've been in trucking logistics. You're in Texas, which is a big, I think like the second highest area for human trafficking. What have you seen in your time in the industry in human trafficking that brought your attention to the issue?
Human trafficking has been around for a very long time. And one of the things that I've noticed is everything revolves around secrets. And so I think we don't hear about it because nobody wants to talk about it. And the reason that it caught my attention is that with secrets, kids are told not to say anything. This is a secret. We don't want anybody to know. And we hear about this all the time. We watch it in movies. We watch it on television. And it reminded me that back in my younger days, we didn't talk about things. So
Right.
My sister was raped when she was about 20 years old. She never got counseling because nobody wanted to talk about it. Just it'll go away, just move on. Well, she spiraled downward, and she died at an early age just because she didn't get counseling that she needed. So then when I started seeing the trafficking, it just kind of brought that together with what's going on with these younger kids. I mean, we're educating people about trafficking. We're rescuing kids. But then what happens after they're rescued? Nothing. I mean, there's no counseling for them. There's a little bit, but we don't have the services that we need because there's so many kids that are involved that we just don't have enough counselors. We don't have enough facilities. And honestly, a lot of the places that they get taken to are not the best places for them to go. Even in the homes that they're put in, it can lead to worse things than what they just came out of. So I decided a few years ago, it was on my mind that I wanted to do something that I felt like we all have a purpose in life. And it just hit me that this was it. And so I reached out to Nicole Glenn and Christy Knichel, who are my co-founders in this, and they said, we're on board. So we started just jumping in, and we felt like it was meant to be because everything that we did just fell into place. Everybody wanted to volunteer. Everybody wanted to do things pro bono. And so the doors just started opening, and we realized that we were on the right path, that what we're doing is going to really be helping these kids, especially the kids.
It's such a huge trauma, and it feels like today there's more recognition in general that those kind of traumas when you're young, that how serious they can be. I said it wasn't around when your sister went through what she did. So as you said, there's organizations out there raising awareness, if you see something, say something and all that, but it seems like really a possibly overlooked area. Tell me a little bit about your background.
So I've been in transportation for almost 40 years now. I started out as a freight broker back when they were just when women weren't in the industry.
Yeah.
And so I worked for a company when freight brokers had a bad name, and so I decided to become an agent, and everything has just led up to where I am now. So I've worked for asset companies, asset-based freight brokerage. I work now for Talon Freight Services. I'm the CFO for them. I started about 3 years ago with Saving Our Sisters, which is a mentoring program for women who want to get into the leadership positions in transportation. And then Nicole and Christy called me, and I'm a regular panelist on Ladies Leadership Coalition, the podcast. So before transportation, I was a teacher, and so but transportation has just been my life, and I've enjoyed it. I should be retired now, but why? So
The women who co-founded it with you, they are involved in logistics in some way as well, aren't they?
yeah, Christy Knichel is the president of Knichel Logistics, and Nicole Glenn is the president and owner of Candor Expedite. So we're all in transportation. Transportation seems to be a common theme in trafficking because they move people over the roadways, the airways, the waterways, the railroad. So there's a big network of a lot of us that are all in different areas trying to stop this, and I don't know if we can. This is such a deep, deep problem. And because we can't even get up-to-date numbers of how many people are being trafficked, about 25% of all women and children trafficked, both labor and sex trafficking, 25% are kids. And so we've heard about the kids that have come across the southern border, because I live in Texas. We don't know where they are. And I heard over the holidays that now they're thinking it's more like 500,000 instead of 300,000, but even they think that number is too low. So it's a big business. They make a lot of money off of it. And it's not just your cartels, it's families, it's people they know. A lot of mothers, some of the women I've met that were trafficked at a very young age, it was their mothers and fathers that started trafficking for the money.
Wow.
And so people, I think, have a misconception of what trafficking is. But I do know that if you're under 18, that's considered child trafficking. And so a lot of these young girls and boys have been trafficked for years, and now they're older. They've finally gotten rescued, or they're too old for the system. They still need help too, because it's ingrained in them. They don't know what else to do. So the counseling will help them get their life back and recover from the abuse. But even some of the women I've talked to that were trafficked at a young age, even now in their 40s and 50s, they still have bad days where the evil just washes over them. And so I don't know if you're ever totally free from it, but it's better than not getting any help at all. But the kids that don't get help, they generally have PTSD, they have eating disorders, they commit suicide, or they'll go back in and continue doing what they've been doing because they don't know any other life.
Yeah, they don't know anything else. Gift of Freedom, your group, how are you going about helping getting counseling to some of these victims?
So we're working with a network of people. We work with law enforcement, with CPS, Child Protective Services, child advocacy centers, churches, legal teams, that because these kids also have to go to court. So they take sometimes they have to take them away from their parents. So we're getting the word out that we're here, and they don't always have the money to get the help that they need. So our closest estimate is that it takes about $4,000 a year per child. So that's where we come in. So we want to give the funds to help them get the help they need. So that's what we raise our money for the funds. And 100%, well, about 95%, we do have some admin costs, but none of us take a pay. We don't take a salary. So the money goes to help the kids, to the cause.
my next question was, what can people do to help support your mission? I guess obviously donations.
Donations, sponsorships. Right now, we started in Texas because that's where Nicole and I live. And Texas is the number 2 state behind California. And Houston is the number 1 city in the United States. So we have a triangle. It's San Antonio, Houston, Dallas. That's where most of the trafficking in Texas is, and a little bit in the valley. So, but we want to grow nationwide because it's not just a Texas problem, it's a nationwide problem. So if you want to volunteer, if you want to talk to us about opening maybe a chapter in another state, just reach out to me, Sharon.Siar at giftoffreedom.org, and we'd love to talk to you. We need all the help we can get.
And we can include some of that contact information and website in the description with this video and podcast. What has been the response so far?
It's been really good. We're talking to some companies that are going to sponsor us right now. When we launched in October, it took us about a year to get everything ready. We didn't want to launch too soon before we were ready. We immediately started receiving donations. Everybody wants to hear about the program. So we've raised quite a bit of money, a lot faster than I thought we would. So we're very excited about that.
And what are your goals you were talking about? I guess eventually taking it nationwide. Do you have sort of stepwise goals there as to, what's next?
Right now, we've just been focusing on the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Right, as you just got started.
So in the next month, I'm going to San Antonio because it's a big problem in San Antonio, and then Houston. So we're going to work on that. But we're also getting calls right now. I know Christy lives in Pittsburgh. So she's working with organizations that are helping traffickers, that are survivors of trafficking. And so we've already reached out to the Pennsylvania area. She's working in that area for us. So we're just taking it one step at a time, one child at a time, because that's what our focus is just helping a child just recover and live a normal life free of abuse.
And so have you already been helping human trafficking victims?
We have. So we have an organization that we're partnered with here in Dallas. So there are children there, and we've given money to them so the counselor, to help with the counseling. We're talking to trauma counselors who are independent, who want to help us. So as we talk to law enforcement or find a child that is in need, they will work with them. So we're covering all the costs for all of that.
Do you get counselors that want to volunteer or do things at reduced rates?
Yeah, we're trying to get them to do. We haven't had any volunteers yet, but we have been able to get some at a reduced rates, which is phenomenal. And then, of course, some of the churches are building homes for these kids because there's not enough facilities to house them. For some reason, the government isn't releasing. They have money, but they're not releasing it. So that's the other thing that we're doing is we're trying to talk to our congressmen and senators, the politicians, to get them on board to help us with this. And to get them facilities where these kids can actually live and be safe. And we can find the counselors that will go in and work with them. But a lot of the churches are building houses, and they'll have like 4. The one organization we're working with, they have 4 in a house, and they can stay there for about 2 years. Longer if it's really necessary, but it takes about 2 years to help them recover with constant counseling.
Do any of these kids have families to go back to once they get rescued?
Some do. A lot of them are teenagers where they've run away from home, but there's a reason they've run away from home.
Right.
It's not a good family atmosphere. But then I talked to one survivor. She ran away from home. It was a bad situation at her house, but when they found her, they put her in juvenile detention. So we've got to make awareness. We've got to put the awareness out there that these kids don't want to be out there. There's a reason. And some of the counselors I've talked to have told us that by the time they dig down deep when they've been arrested, when they start counseling and they dig deep, it's all about sex. They've been abused. Even if it's not trafficking, they've still been abused by a family member or a friend of a family member or a teacher. I know there were some arrests a couple of months ago in Dallas at high-end hotels. And to me, they've got to not only go after the traffickers, they have to go after the people that are buying the services. Because some of these people they arrested, they were coaches at schools, they businessmen, counselors. So it's not just your dark alley cartel type situations. No. These are wealthy people that are
people in positions that have influence over kids and trusted positions. And
these kids don't know who to trust. I don't know who to trust anymore. I've talked to so many. I've gotten so far into this that it's very disturbing. I told Nicole and Chrissy, I said, I'm going to need counseling for this.
That's what I was going to say. I wonder, if y'all need some counseling to deal with that's,
because it's very dark. And then when you realize it could be anywhere, it could be your next door neighbor, it could be somebody at your church. It's not always, you can tell the sleazy motels and stuff, but when it's happening in nice neighborhoods and in nice hotels and people aren't saying anything, that's why it's such a worldwide problem. And we often think that these kids are getting kidnapped and taken overseas, and they are, but it's not as big as just here in our own country. The United States is one of the top countries for trafficking. It's billions and billions of dollars. It's a big industry, and they're not going to give up the money easily. And it's not just teenagers. There are people that want infants. You're talking about infants 3 and 4 years old. But the average, like in Dallas, there was an article in the paper the other day that there's at least 400 young girls on the streets in Dallas every night, and the average age is 12.
Oh, geez. Trucking has been really involved in trying to prevent human trafficking or catch human trafficking, identify possible victims. Are you working with trucking groups to help spread the word or get volunteers or funding?
We are. We have an organization, and it's a network of groups. Our next meeting is in February. But you have a lot with the intermodal group that they're paying attention to containers when they come off the rail, making sure there's no one in those containers. Then you have the trucking industry. You have the air. So we're all working together because to me, transportation is a big part of this. If there's no way to move them around, it's going to hinder their growth. And hopefully we can stop this at some point. And the laws have got to change. The penalties have got to get worse. Texas is the only state that it's a felony to buy sex from a victim. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well,
a trafficker can get up to 25 to 30 years. So I think it needs to be worse than that. I think that we really need to, if they didn't have customers, it would help stop some of this. But it's evil.
Well, it's a wonderful thing that y'all are doing to try to help these victims. And anything else that you want to add that we haven't gone over?
No, I think we've covered. I just want people to be aware of their surroundings. Be careful with your kids and your grandchildren. My poor grandchildren, they can't do anything anymore without me questioning everything they're doing. But now with the social media, that's how a lot of these traffickers are getting these kids. So pay attention to what apps your kids are on. They're always looking for people that are having problems at home. So that's who they hone in on first. And so just be aware. Don't just let your kids be on the internet. It's dark. There's a dark web out there, and there are people on there trying to stop these people from getting to your kids, but it's so big they can't get everybody. So we have, as parents and grandparents, we have to be aware of it and do our part too.
All right, great. Well, Sharon, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you for having me.
So, we'll certainly try to send some folks your way with donations and volunteers.
Just go to giftoffreedom.org. That's our website.
All right, giftoffreedom.org. All right, thanks so much. Again, this is Deborah Lockridge with HDT Talks Trucking. I've been talking to Sharon Siar with the nonprofit Gift of Freedom. And thanks so much. Thanks for watching or listening to HDT Talks Trucking. You'll find more trucking news and insights on our website, truckinginfo.com, where you also can subscribe to our e-newsletters. And don't forget to subscribe to HDT Talks Trucking on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss an episode.